Hey everybody, Nate Winters here in the Troon Cellar. We have our winemakers Nate Wall and Michael Wagner. We're here to discuss our upcoming September Wine Club release. The wines are in front of you. We have our 2023 Druids White, our 2024 Mourvedre, and the 2023 Signet Syrah. We wanted to give you a little insight in their minds on how they make these wines and why they make them the way they do. So we'll just jump right in. The Druids White for us is a nice blend that showcases a sense of place from Troon. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Druids series means to you, or what you're trying to convey using these blends?
Yeah, the Druids blends that we make are meant to try to convey like the entirety of the Troon property. With biodynamics, we talk about like the farm as an ecosystem, like an interconnected ecosystem with different, aspects of the farm overlapping and influencing one another. With the Druids blends, we do try to, pull fruit from all parts of the property and put those blends together to kind of have that like holistic view of like the entire property. Really, just give you, that like great introduction to like, the entirety of what we're working with here. So that's why we always get to use several different varieties in our Druids blends. In this year, we used Grenache Blanc, we used Marsanne, Vermentino, and Roussanne. And those, a lot of the, we have 20 different grape varieties planted here. A lot of them all are meant to work in conjunction with each other. Many of them can be standalone, like separate varieties as well, but a lot of them just work really well together. And for the Druids blends, we just really try to find those synergies and put them together.
Speaking of synergies, how does that work with you with approaching this wine when you blend it? Are you coming up with a blend?
Well, I think that's one of the most fun parts for us, because obviously the wines are in a state where we actually get to see how they turned out. We get to try vessel by vessel all of the different wines that we've made that year. We have a lot of different clones and varieties that we're working with, and so for our white wine program, for example, we'll bring in a taste of every single vessel, whether it's in one of our concrete vessels, barrels, and we try them vessel by vessel, and then slowly kind of put together what we think will be great standalone variety wines versus this blend. So you get something different every year, but it still follows that same philosophy and allows you to really see what Troon did that year.
Yeah, it's been great seeing which grapes complement each other and which you're learning work better standalone.
I really like that it actually is also a reflection of the vintage too, because again, having that blend of varieties that we grow here, in different years, different grape varieties perform differently, and some years like we have a higher yield on this grape, some years a higher yield on this other grape, and so the Druids line does kind of reflect that, in that the proportions change, vintage by vintage, but it's based on that vintage. So you are kind of getting that like holistic picture again of like, what did well that year, because there's like more of it in that blend on a given year. And so it's really reflective of, our terroir, and that we have vintage variation and that you can actually taste that year after year.
Vessels may also change the amount of different varieties we get, so it's fun for us to play too.
Yeah, it's a lovely wine, just around 12.5% alcohol. The holidays are coming up. It's a perfect use, acid-driven, nice focus, a lot of lift, great pairing. The second wine that we have, the Signet Syrah. Would you mind, Micah, can you explain to them what a Signet is?
Sure. It is a baby swan, which we actually have on the property, located not far from where a lot of the Syrah is being grown on our block 13 for this vintage. So they had how many just now?
They had 6 Signets this year.
Yeah.
And they've adopted one Canadian goose for some reason. That's just trying to get in there on the protection of those big swans.
The ugly gosling.
Yeah.
Yes. We bottle a couple different Syrahs every year. We have 4 clones on the property, and so picking them, making them, differently in the vein that Micah and Nate were just talking about. Would you mind elaborating a little bit on what Syrah different than the other Syrahs we produce?
Yeah, so going back to that, we've got the 4 different clones of Syrah growing kind of across our property, and we also have 4 different main soil types here. Try to spread those out to really, give it, let each clone kind of like show off its differences. And the Signet 2023 Signet Syrah is a blend of 3 of those 4 clones. It's about 50% of the Joseph Phelps clone, about 40% of the 174 clone, and about 10% of the 470. Thanks. Yeah, the 470 clone. It's like talking about 2023. Like here it is. It's 2025. Like we're getting ready for harvest. My brain's on 2025. But yeah, 2023. So the Joseph Phelps Block 13 clone, that's the one down by the Signets, and they kind of like wander around the vineyard as they're getting ready. So yeah, it seems like an appropriate name for this wine. But the blend is kind of meant to reflect, like we said, the Syrah is very multifaceted, and it's I think part of the problem why a lot of people find Syrah maybe a little difficult to understand, because depending on where it's grown, it's very transparent of its growing conditions. In the same way that people talk about Pinot Noir, Syrah is like a warmer version of that, and so it's so transparent that when you're buying a bottle of Syrah, if you haven't had it before, it can go from like really light and elegant to like super dark and jammy, and you don't really know where it's going to be in there. And Syrahs at our property have some of that spectrum, maybe not quite the entire range, but this wine here is meant to reflect one of those aspects of Syrah at our property, which kind of leans into it has the fruit in there, but then it has these really nice and more herbal components to it, kind of like you get that depth and the complexity, especially with that long finish. It kind of like has that fruit up front and some nice herbal qualities, dark, more northern Rhone kind of inspired Syrah. And yeah, this one is also maybe meant to, we even though it's a 2023, we're releasing now. Our estate Syrah sometimes takes a little bit longer to get to that release, and the Signet we can release a little bit sooner.
I think you'll notice a change as a club member in our Syrah program, which I enjoy personally. It's all subjective, but our Syrahs now visually have started to take on more of this purple, dense color, which is really reflective of the grape. And you'll start to see with every bottling, as our younger vines are getting older and we're making wines from these clones, you'll see, I think, a more true character of Syrah that we can express our true sense of place in that fashion. This is about 13% alcohol, roughly 15 or so percent full cluster. It spent some time in oak. Everything here is mature oak, and so I think it really shows the delicacy of this wine, but still providing nice shoulders and structure at the same time. The next wine that we have is our Mourvedre. This is a 2024 wine, and our fans and our supporters and our club members know that we've made an amphora in the past, or I'm sorry, a Mourvedre in the past, and we've called it amphora Mourvedre. This is just Mourvedre. So if you don't mind, maybe Michael, can you talk about the difference here from the amphora Mourvedre to now just a Mourvedre for us?
She would love to talk about
I would
that.
be delighted. So we have quite a bit of Mourvedre on this property growing, and in the past, like you mentioned, had mainly used our 2 larger amphora right back here. So we would go through a blending session as usual, but it would typically all end up together, maybe a little bit of Grenache getting used to top it, because those 2 play really well together. But we noticed this last year that during harvest of 2024, when we would taste our ferments of Mourvedre being made for red wine, they just were all very distinct and so delicious. I mean, we feel like this grape is doing really well on this property. We love having it as a part of our program. There's a lot of depth and complexity to this wine, and it was, this is our first time doing something like it, but I would say it's turning out how we wanted. So you get a lot of fruit, and then then there's also a lot of really delicious herbal qualities and a little bit of savory at the end. All used oak, as Nate has mentioned. We don't use any new oak during our program. So we kind of took it a different direction, and now you get to try what this grape does on our property in 2 different vessels. So they're a nice kind of side by side for you to see. Definitely a little more like texture when it comes to the amphora wines in general, but still just a good example of what our property does with Mourvedre.
Yeah, and Mourvedre, in case you haven't necessarily encountered that grape as a standalone in the past, we were just talking about Syrah, Mourvedre, and then Grenache is another large player here, but that Grenache, Syrah, Mourvedre, that's that GSM that a lot of people are familiar with, maybe from, like a Côte d'Aron style wines, and there's a reason that those kind of are the main players. And what's nice about them is they are all really good individually, going back to what I was saying, but then they all also blend really well together. And so, like Michael was saying, the Mourvedre, sometimes we ferment it as a 100% Mourvedre, but then when we're topping the vessels, amphora don't actually take a lot of topping. Barrels take a little more topping, but we still do top the amphora. We'll sometimes top that with Grenache in the same way that this Mourvedre was in neutral oak barrels, and some of the topping we would top a little bit with Syrah, a little bit with some Grenache in there. So technically this is probably 99.5% Mourvedre and like a little bit of Syrah and Grenache.
Yeah, this wine has become one of my favorites, Mourvedre on this property in general, because typically when you buy Mourvedre or run into it from the south of France or Spain, it can be very exhaustive and very earthy and punchy and structured. And what we're experiencing right now with our younger vineyard is you get to see this elegant, pretty, textural, herby side that typically kind of takes a back seat to Mourvedre. So I really love what these are doing, providing diversity in the portfolio of the wines that we make as well, especially for this club. I think this is a club of diversity, 3 wines that taste completely different from each other. The last question I have for you, and both of you can take a shot at this. With Mourvedre in mind, has working with Mourvedre from Troon either inspired you one way or surprised you in one way, working with it so far?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start since Micah will wax poetic in a moment.
Yeah.
But I think Troon or Mourvedre at Troon was a bit of a surprise for me. I mean, I did plant it. I made the decision to plant it intentionally, thinking that it would be a good match. But I was even shocked at just how good of a match it was. Like I've always felt that on our site, like I was mentioning with the Syrah is just such a nice conveyor of our terroir, of what our property is and does and what makes it unique. But Mourvedre is like that too here. And like you were saying, Mourvedre isn't always like that when you encounter other Mourvedre. Like, it's it can be just really savory and a lot of earthiness, which ours does have, but then it also gets that elegance here. And so that was a bit of a surprise for me, is just how well Mourvedre does stand alone from our site. I guess I wasn't expecting that. I was intending to blend our Mourvedre with Grenache and Syrah and make more of a red blend, but it was surprising to me just how special it is all by itself.
I love the fact that we achieved such phenomenal ripeness with low alcohols. I mean, this is 12%, but it drinks so complete. It's not hollow or anything. So I love that. That's a good testament to the elegance, of 12% in Mourvedre.
Yeah, just going off that, I think how complex the grape is on its own really surprised me, because I actually hadn't worked with it until this last vintage. And so trying it both as a rosé and a red wine, all the different layers it has, and then depending on what vessels you're using, what you're using it for, we farm with intention of having things go to certain wines. And so, we're head training these vines, and I think the concentration of flavor is really showing from that. But then, we're mentioning like herbal, savory, the complexity of it, a little bit of you know, any flavor components from other things other than the grapes themselves. So I think to be able to do that so well between the farming and the winemaking philosophy and style is really cool.
Yeah, these wines are exciting to say the least. All of the wines that we're making are from the new vines, and so our real personality as a farm and vineyard are really showing a lot of optimism in these wines. These, of course, are coming up. It's September at the Applegate Tasting Room at the farm. Our wine club celebrations and releases will be on the 13th and the 20th, and then at McMinnville it'll be on the 14th and 21st. So you can catch us on these upcoming weekends. We look forward to doing this again with the next club release and talking about those wines as well. Of course, if you have more questions, you feel free to follow up on Instagram in the comments section, or just shoot us an email. We're happy to divulge some more information. Thank you for listening. Thank you for you guys' time, and we look forward to doing this again. See you later.
And buy more